Welcome to week 3 of EN 102 Business Writing. This week we are going to be doing a style that you're going to see this week, next week, and then also repeated in weeks 5 and 6, which is we'll spend this week looking at the overall basic concept behind the kind of essay you're going to write, do some of the pre-writing, do some of the preliminary work, and then the next week on week 4 you will be spending time developing the essay itself and working out because it's a little bit longer of an essay, so you have a bit more time after you've done the research and the preliminary work this week. Next week, you can focus mostly on writing and editing. And weeks 5 and 6 will be the similar style. So, this week's content overview, of course, is there's 2 chapters from workplace communication. One is about summaries, which is the kind of assignment you're going to be working on, although yours is going to be a little bit more academic focused. Chapter 11, which is on long reports, which is not necessarily part of what we're discussing, but cause and effect analysis is a kind of report. How did this happen? What was the cause for it? Where did we go with it? Purdue Online Research Lab, of course, has 2 pages on how do you conduct research and how do you evaluate those sources. And of course, WikiHow shows you how to write this kind of essay. So, in the book reading, summaries are a concept which you'll be using a lot, which is you need to take a lot of data, either from research or from what happened during a day, or something you've been told, or something, or a seminar you've gone to, or something like that. And you need to distill it down for other people, your coworkers, your bosses, to put into a report, whatever. And this is a difficult process, actually. If you ever were stumped by the question, so what did you do in school today? Or what did you do at work today? This is the summary issue. Because if you try to think of all the details, if you try to tell everybody exactly everything that happened by step, they're going to be swamped with information and they're not going to actually know what you mean or what is important to get out of that. Whereas if you go in too vague detail, we learned how to, work on math, on fractions or whatever. That doesn't give any information that is useful. It's a tidbit, it's a sentence that it doesn't catch any attention, and nothing is learned that way. So you need to learn how to do useful summaries. And so there's several kinds of summaries. There's a descriptive summary, which talks about, in this example, how something may be relevant, how this study can be relevant in other things because of these reasons. In informative summaries, what's going on here, how let us tell somebody what happened or pass on information in a useful way. Evaluative summary, here's things going on and here's what was right or wrong about it. In this case, these summaries are something I want you to pay attention to and learn how to do. Go through these steps of how to read through it, look for the context, learn how to distill information down, especially learn how to get the information out of a paragraph. So you should know that the main point of a paragraph is usually in the beginning or the end of the paragraph, and the middle is usually where information is placed to help support that main point. And so if you're quickly trying to summarize it, you'll try to look at what the main point is of a paragraph from the beginning to the end, and then try to distill that down and see if you can distill down the information given. Like if they give you 3 sources explaining it, can you briefly talk about what those sources were saying and say, used several scholarly articles to make this point. So then your main point is to be concise, which is don't waste time. That doesn't mean you need to be boring, dry language, but don't spend all of your time trying to go into not useful detail. Explain what is in there, explain why that information is important, and explain how that information can be used. Think of those 3 elements: what it is, why you chose it as important, and how it can be used. If you focus on those 3 things, you rarely will go wrong with the summary. And so those are the points of summary, and this will give you all kinds of examples, again, of how summaries look. So make sure you look carefully at the examples, and they can take all sorts of forms of reports, memorandum, short reports, that sort of thing. And then, of course, you'll want to look at the next chapter, chapter 11, which is about long reports. So this is talking mostly about the kinds of lengthy reports that can be used to drive, make business plans, can be used to drive several meetings or to closely evaluate a situation. So what's important in here is making certain that you have sources that can back up what you're saying, that those sources are good sources. And by good, I mean not necessarily that it just supports what you want to say, but that it is reliable, that the information in it can be seen as correct, that there isn't a lot of doubt about what's going on here. And so you need to understand why different sources the way they are is, it's not just because it's in a book, but is the book written by somebody who's reliable? Do they have a good history of scholarship? And if you don't know, that's what things like Google and those kinds of things are for, is you can use them to look at what else they've written, what people are saying about them, how well they've been understood, and their ideas have held up. For example, if you can find a couple books by a person who has a fairly controversial theory of economics, that doesn't necessarily mean that their theories are correct just because you found books by them. What do other people think of those theories? Why are they accepted or not accepted? And that same thing with everything. One thing to be really careful about, especially in this day and age, is journalism. Articles from newspapers and magazines are not necessarily wrong, but they, by their very nature, distill things and can also sometimes present a viewpoint from an editorial stance. So think carefully about those articles, and don't just take your word for it or what you people have said. Look at what their actual standard of quality and factual information is. You can, of course, use information from biased sources as long as you present that it is biased, what the bias is, and why that may affect how people will see the sources. Academic journals are another good source, although they are a little less often used in business writing. They still can be, especially economics and other business theory type classes. But then again, you still have to understand whether or not just because somebody published it academically doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So you have to learn how to evaluate sources. So go through this information about how you look at and evaluate sources, so you know that when you choose sources, they're useful to you. And then, of course, Purdue Online Rating Lab has an overview of how you can look for it. I give you the first page to look at. I expect you to be able to look at all of these other pages here, such as what's the difference between online and in print, how you find sources, how you conduct your research. And then, of course, if you're not certain how to cite these, that's what the MOA guide and that sort of thing is. How do you use these sources to help you understand and help other people understand where you got the information from? And of course, evaluating your sources. Just because you found information, you need to evaluate. And again, I expect you to go through these other pages. They're short pages, as you can see, to have an understanding of whether or not the sources are useful. And finally, this will help you understand the process of writing the essay you'll need to turn in on week 4, and you'll be doing the pre-writing for, which is, how to write a cause and effect essay. So those are the basic things there. And obviously the quiz, as you'll see here, just asks you a couple questions about each chapter, but that's meant to guide you through the rest of the chapters. So writing exercises, I want you to practice with the MOA formatting and style guide. So you can use this to help you understand what you need to do. If you, again, don't know how to use the guide very well, this is a good way to start going about it. So look at the style guide, look at the basics. These all follow rules, and every kind of style you're going to be asked to work in, whether it's MOA, MPA, Chicago style, whatever it is, have certain things that they request. And those requests make sense if you learn the basic rules behind it. So understand, one, how in-text citations work and why they work the way. Understand how a works cited page works and why we ask for the information we do in the works cited page, and how, and other things. And if you have questions specifically, electronic sources, periodicals, that sort of thing, they have specific sites here. Another thing I often use is I recommend the use of a site like EasyBib or Zotero, and there's several other sites like this. EasyBib is very useful. It helps you find sources for things, So you can check, or you want to create citations, that sort of thing. So what you do is you input what your information is, and if you don't know, if you are not certain, you can just say, I want to type in a journal article, and it will by itself start you building your own journal article and all that sort. Either you can use it by article title, keywords, or you can input information and it'll ask you for whatever's missing. And that's a good way to go. But I recommend looking at the format rules so that you understand what EasyBib is looking for and what it outputs and whether or not it's correct. So for that, here I just want you to look at, you can use this tool to help you cite these things, but I want you to go back to the formatting guide, make sure everything's correct. There's two different sources. I took this basic information from Wikipedia, obviously, and I want you to be able to input what you need to input to give yourself useful sources. And then I want you to summarize these sources briefly, 2 or 3 sentences. If you don't know the sources well, if you don't know Moby Dick or the Matrix very well, you can just look at the Wikipedia pages and figure out how to summarize those in a useful way. And that'll get you practice for what the assignment is going to be. In here also, you'll notice that I've added some things just for the fun of it, which you don't have to take too seriously, but it's just ways to look at this, like ideas we have of when I insist on you using proper grammar and that sort of thing, how many people will see that. But of course, the idea behind this is certainly you can go overboard and be silly about proper adherence to grammar rules and stuff, but we do talk about this for a reason. It helps make communication clearer and harder to misunderstand, as this little image will hopefully demonstrate. We also have another video to kind of help you wrap your mind around exactly what we're looking for with cause and effect essays. And then, of course, the reflection form, it's not necessarily cause and effect, but talk about critique to work and stuff. So I will be getting your week 1 papers back to you probably Monday. There was a delay with my machines here at home, and I'll have that probably all done by tomorrow at noon, and then I will also try to get everything else graded from week 2 by Wednesday. And so you should be able to look at those papers and the feedback and try to reflect on how you respond to critique. Mostly I want you to understand for your own purposes why critique is useful and how you react to it. Because many people say, oh, I'm fine with it, but actually what it does is it makes them resentful, or they don't listen to it, or they get a chip on their shoulder, and so they don't respond well to critique. So for the actual assignments themselves, the cause and effect essay, obviously I have a link here if you want to see what the cause and effect essay assignment is. It's not necessary, it's just to help you understand what the long-term goal is. You do not turn in the full essay this week. You'll turn it in on week 4. But I gave you, of course, the pre-writing guides for the guided writing assignment. And you'll go through this and you'll follow steps 1 through 7 here and make certain that your pre-writing is ready to go. And then you'll then go through the essay analysis. And what I want you to do with that is analyze, look at this article here. It is not a very long article, so it should be easy enough to read. And then I want you to answer these questions. When I ask you to answer these questions, a sentence or two, lean towards 2 sentences if you can, to help understand that you can figure out how this essay does or does not work as a cause and effect analysis. Because it's such a short article, you're going to see that it probably doesn't do a very good job of analyzing things, but it does do a fairly good basic job. So you want to try to understand what is working and is not working, and put it in terms of your expectations. And finally, research summaries. So once you've gone through this preliminary work, you're going to understand that you need to be able to do some research. So one thing you'll need to do is research a couple of your assignments. And you'll need to get a few sources. So you need to have 2 sources. and you should that way go through this, look at your sources, summarize what they say, and it should be fairly simple to do. But what the point is to help you understand whether or not the sources you're using are adequate. So you remember the evaluating sources, texts, and advice columns. This will be more useful for week 6 when the essay will require more sources, but you might as well get that practice in now. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Next, I'll be making week 4 available sometime in the middle of the week, where you'll see the next set of assignments to help you get your essay written. And I will get all of those grades back to you as soon as possible. If you have any questions, as always, you can email me or show up to in class, my online class, my online office hours, and I'll see